Oh, this one's a little bit more hidden. Not as much color on there. That's understandable. This one doesn't get as much light. Hey, what's up, garden friends? Jeff here. How's everybody doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm great. Palm trees are leaving tomorrow, which is irrelevant. Don't know when this video is coming out. But I wanted to talk about some things before they go away. I'm going to have to tear these planters apart. And the bromeliads are looking so good that I thought, let's talk about bromeliads. Broad strokes for growing bromeliads. Here's the thing. I've always wanted to talk about bromeliads in a video, but it's such a big group of plants. It's kind of like saying, here's how to care for orchids. When there's thousands of different types, it's kind of hard to say this is what you do for all of them, right? But bromeliads, I think that they're not quite cut and dry, but there's enough in common with the ones that you're likely to be growing that just going over some general care should be pretty easy. First thing I have to say though, with the bromeliads, is that if you don't know what kind you're growing, then that's a problem. You need to figure out what type you're growing because the type of light that they want is highly variable. So you have the Neorigelias, which a lot of can take more light. Some of the Ecmeas can take more light, or you maybe have the Guzmanii. I don't know if I'm even saying that right. They're the most common, the ones you see at the big box stores. They're going to want things more filtered. They'll scorch more easily. So it's important to know what you have, or at least have an idea of the species so that you know what type of lighting they're going to need. Overall, pretty easy plants though. Fun, colorful epiphytes, all different shapes, sizes, and colors to choose from. Epiphyte, that's an important thing to remember with them, right? Don't want to put these into a potting mix that doesn't drain well, or else they will rot and they will die. You can use an aeroid mix if you want to. Don't know why my voice cracked there, but I'm gonna go with it. I prefer to do an aeroid mix that's about 50-50 blended with a standard potting mix. That's a pretty one down there. So these are the Neorigelia fireballs. They can take all kinds of sun. The more sun they get, the more red they're going to be, and they branch off really well. Maybe you're growing a Tillandsia, which you would care for just like you would a bromeliad. They're not going to want as much light as, say, one of these do. Again, that's why it's important to know what type you're growing. Big landscape size ones, most of those can take a lot of sun. The main thing I wanted to cover was repotting, but I don't think I have any here that need to be repotted. It's not looking like it. Well, like I said, use a mix that drains really well. The Bromeliad Care potting mix from Better Homes is pretty decent. I have some right here that I can show you. I don't typically like a pre-packaged soil, but for bromeliads, I'd say that this is pretty good. It says it has the cocoa core, composted bark, coarse perlite. I don't know why they don't mention that there's also potting mix in here. That's an important thing for them to be mentioning. This is probably about what I was saying, about a 50-50 blend, something like that. That's gonna help make sure there's enough moisture and enough structure for them to root out and hold on to something, but it's not gonna hold on to so much moisture that they'll rot away. So when it's time to repot them, which is fairly infrequent depending on what size you got them at, there might be different reasons you want to repot them. I should mention that too. Perhaps the plant is just needing a new container. You just want to put it into something different, then just go ahead and do it. Otherwise, you just want to repot them basically when it's seeming like you can't keep the things hydrated anymore, or perhaps the main plant has died off. So a lot of the times when you buy a bromeliad, it's just a single nice vase-shaped plant like this. Usually the ones that are sold at the big box stores and a lot of nurseries have a big pretty inflorescence on top. When that flower dies off, then the mother plant dies off. You can let that turn brown, cut it off once it's brown, and then they put up little pups. Once those pups are roughly a third the size of the main plant, which will probably gone down and died down some, but let's say, well, these are almost the same size as their parent plants. Is there anything that's a better representation in here? I didn't come prepared, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to go out and buy bromeliads for the video too, when I have so many and I can always just put some up on the screen. Let's say this puts off an offshoot, has a whole bunch of pups around it, and once they're probably about this big, then you can usually cut them with a nice clean sharp knife and then pot them up and separate them all out from the mother plant. And sometimes it can be helpful right after they've been repotted to put a big plastic bag over them to help hold in some moisture and some humidity to allow them time to really root out and get going. If you do that, it's nifty to put a stake or something in there to help dome that plastic up above them and keep it spread out so that the edges of the foliage isn't in contact with the plastic, because you start to have discoloration where they're pushing together, the plastic at the end of the leaf, that is. Okay, and then the most frequent thing I get asked about is getting them to bloom again. So say you've gone ahead and you've divided off your pups. Now what? It really depends on the type you have. Like I said, it's important to understand which bromeliads you're growing. The majority of the ones that are sold in bulk, like the Guzmaniis and some of the Ziess, they tend to need a couple of years in between flowering, or for those little offsets to get large enough to flower. There are things you can do to encourage their blooms, like actual, I wouldn't call them hacks because they're things that work. Ethylene. Ethylene is sort of the miracle chemical that you want involved to get them to produce an inflorescence. So some people will get the ethylene to the plant by throwing them in a plastic bag with an apple for, like, I'd say about 2 weeks, something like that. And within maybe 2 to 3 months after that, you should start to see an inflorescence start to form. On a bromeliad like this right here, this Neoregelia, these aren't ones you grow for the flowers. The flowers are held way down on the inside. This is one that's not really an issue. So I wish I had a better representation to put here on the table for you, but you know, something with a spike on it. Maybe you're growing a pineapple. Did you cut the top off of a pineapple and you started growing that? Once that's to a decent size and it's not blooming for you, you can try the apple trick. I think kiwis work as well for releasing some ethylene. The main thing to make sure of when you're doing this is that the plant isn't so saturated when you put it in the bag that you're going to have to worry about rot, right? That could be something to think about. You don't want this to be sitting in a bag in a really sunny location because you could end up cooking it. Just, you know, be mindful of those sorts of things. It's going to be a different growing environment for it, so you might want to move it where it's getting a little bit less light than it would be outside of the bag, so, you know, you don't rot the thing out. And there is a liquid fertilizer that I think is made by Tropiflora. I believe that contains the ethylene, which can help get them to bloom. By doing it through something that's prepared into a fertilizer, you don't have to do the 2-week thing. I don't remember what the method is for using the Tropiflora, because it's been a long time, but it does work. I've used it for my bromeliads before, and it's gotten them to bloom without really any issues. The apple trick has also worked for me also, so you can do whichever. I'm not aware of any other commercially available fertilizers that have the proper form and dosage of ethylene in it to help induce blooming on them. But let us know, right? Comment down below. Let everybody know if you have other tips and suggestions for encouraging flowering. Like I said, that's what I get asked about the absolute most with bromeliads. That and lighting and watering. Again, with the lighting, you just have to know what type that you have. Generally speaking, I would say in the home, filtered light, no afternoon sun. Don't put them too close to the window. That's very general, because there's some like this Neoregelia Fireball that would be totally fine with a whole lot of light being close to a window, as long as you have proper humidity. That's the next thing. Epiphytes. They like things humid. Overall for bromeliads, the more humidity, the better. Water them when they're probably, I'd say, 2 to 3 inches dry down below. Again, that's going to depend on what type you're growing, because some grow in more arid climates where some are very tropical and don't want to dry out for a long time at all. As far as keeping the cups full of water goes, it's a good idea. You don't want them to dry out on the inside. Sometimes tap water can be too harsh for them. You may need to use something that has been, I almost said fertilized. No, just filtered. A filtered water is usually best for filling those cups. I have pretty decent luck with just using tap water, but I know that's not a case for a lot of people. So that's something to think about. Do not let them dry out on the inside, right? Sometimes they can get kind of gross too. Every, I'd say probably month or so, when I have them inside, I do like to take them to a sink and dump them out and blast them off with some water, get the dust and everything off of them, and get some fresh water into those cups. The water getting gross on the inside isn't necessarily a bad thing though, because you start to have decay, but it's a good decay. It's a decay that releases good things for the plants that they can feed off of, because, you know, epiphytes. But indoors isn't the same thing as outside. There's less airflow, there's less warmth, and it's just not always the more desirable types of breakdown that you would want for them. So that's why I like to dump them occasionally and refill with nice clean water. Don't let them sit in water either. It's not necessary. If you're having issues keeping them hydrated, then I would recommend either repotting them or moving them to a location that's more humid. and that will help retain some moisture for them. Having them surrounded by other plants that really like moisture is a good idea. So Spathiphyllum would probably do well around a lot of bromeliads, and you can put those in self-watering containers that always have a reservoir of water in them. You need a lot to do much to increase the humidity, but it's an option. Humidifier is the best way to go if you really want to bring your humidity up, but that's not practical for a lot of us, right? Not all bromeliads are going to be as picky about that either. It's like I said, it really just depends on what type you're growing. Okay, there's like 9-10 minutes of just the very, very, very basic rundown with bromeliads. Sorry I can't be more direct when it comes to lighting, but it's just so variable. Like I said, start low and work your way up. It's such a huge group of plants that have a wide variety of preferences, so there's the general thing. And I think that most people really only care about encouraging blooms. That's what everybody asks me about. Did I talk about fertilizing? I don't think I did. I'd use an orchid or an aeroid fertilizer on them. Otherwise, an all-purpose, it's diluted to quarter strength. That's good enough for them. You can use continuous release down below. Someone's putting them in little satchels. You can, like, hang them up in there if you have them set up in like a basket or something like that. That's one way to do things. They aren't too terribly particular. Just make sure that the nitrogen's not crazy high. Same thing with the phosphorus, because those phosphorus leads to a lot of binding. So you don't want that to be very high at all. The nitrogen being high can just lead to a lot of burn. They're epiphytes, so you'd want to dilute to a quarter strength just to be safe. Yeah, there's the broad strokes. I hope that that was helpful in some way, shape, or form. Comment down below tips, tricks, suggestions, your favorite types, and things you do to encourage blooming on them. If there's anything you do special when dividing them up, let us know. It's how we all learn and grow together. It's impossible to remember everything for one video. And yeah, favorite types, that's really useful. I think one of my favorites is going to be like the Del Mar, Ecmia Del Mar, the beautiful pink and purple inflorescence, the regular Tillandsia cyanae. Probably an all-time just classic favorite of mine, because I love that beautiful pink that they have on them, and they have a really sweet cinnamon-like fragrance to them. Now, there's some really cool ones out there. That was just a couple that I was throwing off the top of my head. Like I said, everybody else comment down below. What are some of your favorites? How are you doing? Your plant's doing well. Hope everybody's doing well, having a great day, a great life, and everything's just going absolutely beautifully for you. I thought that I should probably mention to everybody, the reason this one looks like garbage is because this inflorescence is actually done. This one's done flowering, and it's just doing the thing now where that flower is withering down, and the pups are starting to push up and do their thing. Once they're a third the size of the regular plant, I will cut them out with a knife and start them into their own containers. It's also really dry. I don't know why. I think that the big bromeliad up above it's keeping it from getting hit by the sprayers. I'm gonna go ahead and just move that over here for right now. It'll get more water over there. Oh yeah, see? The water gets pretty gross over time. All kinds of nasty stuff down in there. All right, as always, and most importantly, everybody, keep on growing. Bye.